welcome to another episode with me, your host Kim Mellor, coming to you live from Bali. And you might hear the rain in the background. It's still rainy season and I am getting soaking wet every single day. Note to self, do not go and get a pedicure in Bali in rainy season because your feet end up covered in mud. But I am so excited to introduce my beautiful, wonderful guest this week, Lisa Melbourne. How are you, Lisa?
Hi, Kim. I'm really good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Me and Lisa were just giggling before about how do I actually introduce you? Because Lisa is a clinical aroma-reflexologist. She's a coach, she's an author, she's a mom, she's a daughter. And I was like, why do we even need to put labels on things? You are a light worker here at this time to help heal people in all of these different modalities, right?
Absolutely. And as you gather up your tools and build on your gifts, you end up with all these different facets, and you end up thinking, right, well, I've got I could technically have 10 titles. which one word can I use for all of them?
Exactly. Yeah. And I just think it's so powerful for my listeners to hear people's stories. And we've been connected for a couple of months now, and I've been so inspired watching Lisa write her book and create her courses and just be this mom and inspiration, just on this mission to help people. But I'm so inspired by her story, and I would really love for you guys to just really hear the fact that if Lisa can do this, you can do this. She went from a life of desperation to inspiration, and she has completely changed direction, complete 360 from what she was doing 10 years ago. I think it's really important for you guys to hear that success is not an overnight thing, but where could you be 3 to 5 to 10 years from now? Just from making these small shifts. So, Lisa, could you please share with us your story?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, so it is a slightly unusual one. So I was in the Air Force for 5 years and I was a medic. I was very much brought up in a very masculine military world. My dad was in the army, my brother was in the Marines, I married a Royal Marine. So I very much had that influence, that very, very heavy masculine influence in my life. And so I guess it was a natural progression for me to join the military myself. And I discovered years later that behind a lot of that was this thing about trying to win my dad and his love and affection and make him proud. So yeah, I was in the Air Force and I went to Afghanistan on the Aeromed teams for 4.5 months, and it was probably a mixture of the best and the worst 4 months of my career. I was doing what I joined up to do, but I felt that disconnection from human touch. I was patching people up and sending them on and looking after them in that way, but I always felt like there was something missing from my job, and I felt like it was an element of healing, but I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was. And then decided that I wanted to be a nurse because they had more of a patient care role. So I made the really difficult decision to leave the RAF because I did actually really, really love it, and I loved the experiences it gave me. I left the Air Force and got myself a place at Bournemouth University to do my nursing. I was 27 years old. My husband Sean and I had only been married just under a year, and I thought, well, it's now or never to put myself through uni because I knew I wanted children. So about 2 weeks after I left the Air Force officially, I found out I was pregnant, and it was a complete shock, an amazing one, but a real shock because I thought, oh God, now what am I going to do with my career? And I was so used to having a focus and being driven and having a life that went at a million miles an hour, that always had a direction. And all of a sudden I felt completely lost. So I had to give up my place at university because I couldn't do any of the training while I was pregnant. My husband went off to Afghanistan for 6 months. Where we lived, I didn't know anybody. I felt really alone for the first time in my life. My family and I aren't close. And I really hit rock bottom, really hit rock bottom. On the one hand, I was really excited about being a mum. On the other hand, I felt like I'd lost my entire identity. And I started to suffer with anxiety really badly. And I had nobody to talk to about it. And all of a sudden, I found myself in this scenario where I relied on my husband for everything, the roof over my head, everything that I needed. It all came financially from him. And I was always a really independent woman. So I didn't like being in this situation. It was unfamiliar and I felt vulnerable and I felt really alone. So as I kind of temped my way through different admin jobs throughout my pregnancy, my mental and emotional health really took a battering. And I hit rock bottom. And it's from there, right, that you kind of build yourself up again. And that's exactly what happened. I decided to, for the first time in my life, I started paying attention to my own mental health. And I became really interested in all things nature-based and natural healing, crystals. I was really interested in how to connect the phases of the moon to my own well-being and my cycles. And I started to build up these techniques in my daily life to help support my emotional health. And then I had my daughter, and a year or so after that, I started training as a reflexologist and learned all about the connection between the mind and the body health. And that I found that so interesting, because it really did reaffirm to me that how I felt on the inside reflected how I felt on the outside. And so I've been running my clinic here in Lincoln, UK for 8 years, and I hit a real rocky patch a couple of years ago with my husband and felt like I'd lost my direction again. Felt like I'd lost my anchor, didn't know which direction I was going in. And I picked up my pen one day, always wanted to write a book, but just didn't know what the story was. And I just started writing. It was like something took over me. And the writing that filled up 2 journals in like 2 months became the book that's out on Friday. And it, in my mind, when I was writing it, I thought about all the things that I wanted my children to hear from me, for them to read on their journey, to help guide them with their own emotional and spiritual health. And so they were kind of the focus of the book. And I've created an online membership for women around spiritual health and connecting to nature and the moon and natural therapies. And so that's become my life. So it's been a complete U-turn from going from military to where I'm at now.
Wow.
So that's probably what a lot of people find quite interesting, is how different it is.
I mean, it couldn't be any more different if you've tried. So, okay, let me just unpack this a little bit. So, would you agree that the RAF was quite masculine? Did you feel you were very much in that kind of fight, protect mode?
Yeah, definitely. I grew up with a dad who was very much all about, don't be a sissy, don't show your emotions, don't cry. He was a typical army officer. And so that was instilled in me. And my belief was that I had to, in order to make it in a man's world, I had to join it, and be a part of it. And joining the military was a way of validation for myself and for him, I think.
Yes, 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 yes. Oh my God, this is just like turning me on so much, because yeah, this is something I'm really passionate about as well, is this masculine feminine energy. We're in this world where, women want equality and, absolutely men and women are equal, but ultimately we're different. Like, we are different, the way that we have emotions, and that, like, with our wombs and our hormones and everything. So for women to try and be a man is going completely against nature. And so of course, if you're a woman and you're in that masculine world, that so you felt the point where you just felt like it wasn't for you. What was that point where you just thought, this isn't aligned with me anymore?
There was something when I was in Afghanistan, I felt like I wasn't giving enough, and I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was, but I wasn't connecting in a way that I wanted to with the patients. And one of the things that I recall in my book is an incident with a young soldier who I flew him home. He'd been injured, he had some injuries to his legs. He'd been in a bomb blast, and my team I was looking after him with a couple of his colleagues, and the critical care team who were also on the flight were looking after his friend who was really, really poorly, who had saved his life. He'd pulled him out of the wagon that had been blown up. And so I spent a lot of the time on this very, very long flight back to the UK with this soldier, stroking his hair and holding his hand, because he was in pieces, spiritually, emotionally, physically. He couldn't see his friend because of the way we were lined up on the aircraft. We were all stretchers face one direction. So that worried him because he couldn't see his friend. He had guilt because his friend was in such a mess, and had saved his life. And I saw a fractured soul, and I gave him my music, my iPod and my music. And the way I treated him would probably be called quite unorthodox. You patch them up, and of course you look after their welfare, but sitting there and stroking your patient's hair and things like that, it wasn't something that you did. But I felt like he needed that human touch. He just needed that comfort. And that was the turning point for me when I realized that my job wasn't giving me enough, and I still couldn't quite put my finger on what it was. I thought it was the nursing. I thought, if I'm a nurse rather than a trauma medic that kind of patches people up and saves people's lives and then moves them on, I'll get more time with them to look after them. And most nurses will tell you now that their job now is so infuriating because they don't get enough of that patient time with their patients because they're so busy. And obviously I wasn't meant to be a nurse, but that was the driving force behind leaving, because I felt like the job lacked that emotional feminine connection. That's what it was. And I kind of understood this, but I couldn't quite consciously put into words that feeling to explain it. Yeah.
Well, there's no wonder if you've been brought up in a household full of people that suppressed emotions. And I love how your work is about emotional and spiritual health, because you can be mindful of what food you're putting in your body, but what are you putting into your head, and what energy are you around? And it's so vital, isn't it, to have that emotional and spiritual well-being. Especially in England, I think we're told to stiff up a lip, and if you got nothing nice to say, you don't say it at all. And
Mm-hmm.
me too, I was brought up in a household where my parents never showed emotion, hardly ever saw my mum and dad cry. And I just felt, okay, it's not safe to cry. Like, it's not something that you should do if it's quite weak to cry. And so for most of my life, I've just been quite numb. And
Mm-hmm.
what I've learned over the past few years is the level of grief that you feel is a level of joy that you feel. And so
Yeah.
I've not fully been living this joyful, express life because I've not been feeling the depths of the grief as well.
Yeah.
So that's so incredible that something within you made you go, no, this is right. Because environment's everything. So if you're surrounded by this masculine world of, like, it's not safe to be feminine and nurture people, for you to do that, that was a voice or something, wasn't it? Can you, like, remember what that felt like?
Yeah, I never felt like I fitted 100% into that world, despite the fact that I told myself that I was happy and this was the job, the security, the roof over my head, the big tick in the box from dad. I never really connected with the kind of people that I worked with and lived with. And it is intense when you're in the military because you live and work together. And at the time, I was classed as single because I was living in the block, which is it's a bit like a block of flats on camp around, all the people that you work with on the base. And I just used to want to just do my job and just go back to my room and shut the door, I felt like I had no connection with them. And I felt like I was always trying to be something that I wasn't, to try and fit in and fit the mold and be interested in the things that they were all interested in, which was mostly drinking, because there's a big drinking culture in the military. Don't get me wrong, you know, they do an amazing job. But I just didn't fit that mold the way that I felt I should have. And I felt like I was always on the outside looking in. My mum was always really, she did aromatherapy, and she sparked an interest at an early age with me on complementary therapies and natural healing. So it wasn't really until I left the military and thought, right, what can I do? What can I do that's now got to be flexible around a husband that left the military and went to work abroad in Tanzania. So he was away 6 months of the year. I had a daughter, but I knew I had a purpose as well as being a mother. So, you know, I thought, what do I do that's flexible enough that I can work around me and my family? And it was like something just went onto autopilot, and I just found myself sat on the net one day typing in aromatherapy and reflexology courses, and boom, it came up that there was a college here in Lincoln. And yeah, I've never looked back. It's just grown and grown. And I always feel so grateful for all of the work that I do with the women that come into my life every day, to help to connect them to their health in a mindful way.
Wow. So your intuition was really loud, and it was so loud that it was deafening. And, you know, I think a lot of people, well, we all have these voices, but a lot of the time we don't take time to listen. We're always being busy, or we're numbing with alcohol or TV. And everyone has these voices and downloads available to them, don't they? Like, how do people start to even tune in and think, okay, what do I actually want to do with my life? Like, what would you recommend people start doing?
Well, that's a big chapter, a big part of this book that I've written, because it is hard to tune into your intuition and hear that little voice around you know, in the background noise around daily life and conscious thoughts, and what do I need for tea, and, you know, all these other things. And we've become so disconnected from our intuition because we're living in a life that's so busy and has so many earthly constraints and needs every day in order to just get through a day and survive. Taking time out to journaling is a big thing for me. And what's come from my journaling has been more than I ever could have imagined. When you journal on your thoughts, you are allowing your mind the space to breathe and just to be heard. And so journaling is a really nice way of just getting your thoughts out onto your paper. And you might start with writing something like, oh, today has been like this, but it felt like this because, it felt like that because. So now you're unraveling something. Well, I don't want it to feel like this because I want to change that. You know, so journaling is a big thing. Taking time out to meditate, and you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be the next Buddha. You know, just spend a few minutes, if you're feeling stressed out, just physically take a step back and just go, right, take a deep breath, clear your mind. What will make me feel good right now? You know, or just, I like to imagine, if my head feels clogged up, just clearing my mind, imagining it's a beautiful, clear blue sky and the white fluffy clouds are my thoughts. And I imagine the clouds just passing through and out. I don't hold on to them. I just let them go until all I can feel is this lovely clear blue sky in my head. Really simple techniques like that. Getting out into nature, exercise.
Mhm.
When you give yourself this time to just be in the moment, and that's the difficult thing, isn't it, for people, is to try and be in the moment. If you give yourself that time, you'll be able to hear your intuition.
Mm-hmm. This is music to my ears. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So, I mean, I am I am a massive fan of this. And I think maybe lots of mums out there might be thinking, it's all right for you. You live in Bali, you have staff that work for you, and you've got no kids. Of course, you've got time to meditate. Now, what I like to say is if you haven't got time to meditate, that's why you need to find the time. So if you can't have
Yeah.
10 minutes to yourself, what the heck are you doing? So from a mum's point of view, can you please help any busy mums out there to just see how they need to find the time and how they can?
I have effectively lived my life as a single mum, even though I have my husband, but because I haven't been able to rely on him for anything. He has been here, there, and everywhere, all around the world. Everything to do with their welfare is down to me. I've got two girls. They're now aged 10 and 7. I've had to build a business up on my own. And even with two businesses now, the Natural Me and the clinic that I run, I don't have any help. I'm still doing all of it on my own. And that is something I've got to learn, is to start delegating, because I am now at my limit, my capacity. But I've created, this is the biggest message that I have for people, whether you feel like you've got enough time or not, whether you're a mum, children, you feel like you're overworked, stretched in all directions, you can't give your all to the people around you that you love if you're not giving your all to yourself first. And I encourage you to just keep it really, really simple, small bite-sized moments, whether it's when you're getting dressed in the morning, just consciously looking out of your window for 2 minutes, just, as you pulling your pants on or doing your bra up or whatever, just consciously take a moment just to look out of your window and look at what's going on out there. What can you hear? What can you see? How does the sunshine make you feel? Connect to nature, even if you can't physically be in it in that moment. And just think about how peaceful it looks out there and how calming it is. And the birds are happy and they're singing. The sunshine is streaming through your window. And just take a moment as you're getting dressed to think, I've woken up today and the sun is shining through my window. Or it's throwing it down with rain, which means that, I'm just going to allow myself to just let a few things go today. Just let the stresses go. Just take a moment to be grateful for where you're at and the lessons that are going to come from today, from any points that might be a bit difficult or a bit tricky. That's the biggest thing that I teach, is to take the overwhelm out of connecting with yourself through nature, and mindfulness and crystals and therapies and stuff like that. It's just, you don't have to have hours and hours and hours. It's a way of being that you will slowly learn, because your brain is a muscle and your thoughts like habit. And so it's creating new habits. And that's how you do it, just a little bit at a time, even if it's just with, right, I'm just going to start with a minute first thing in the morning. What am I grateful for?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, how did I sleep last night? How does my body feel today? What do I really, really don't want to, what do I not want to do today? Listen to that, and that's just the start, and just follow that thread throughout the day while you're looking after your kids.
Yeah, I love that. And from someone who is very much used to operating out of the masculine energy, very driven and very aggressive, like I'd probably say the past 6 months to a year, I've really been harnessing my feminine energy. And so sometimes I wake up and I'm like, I didn't want to go to the gym today. I just want to walk around naked and dance in my mirror. And that feels really good and nourishing to me. Today I feel like having waffles and bread. That's what I'm going to have today.
Mm.
And it's amazing whenever I go against that intuition. So, for example, today, Monday, went to the gym, did a class and was like walking for like an hour, and to this morning, I've just felt shattered. And I'm just like, I just want to be feminine and flowy. And I didn't listen to my body, even though I do this all the time. So sometimes if you're like overriding what you're actually feeling, you're going against the grain. So there's so much power to be had in listening to your intuition and following the flow. And again, I used to get up and have this really strict morning routine, which really served me so well for the first few years while I was transitioning from doing no personal development to then being personally developed, but then needing that spiritual development. What I
Mhm.
realized was connection didn't come in a routine. Connection came from me tuning into myself. How do I connect with me? And so for me, my morning routine now is I wake up, I make a tizzy in the morning, I come to bed, I light a candle, I light an incense, and I sit in stillness and I meditate. Excuse me, I've got hiccups. It's probably because I've just had potato waffles and bread. That's what
Perfect
the
timing.
my 30 days is finished, so I'm having a bit of chips and bread. That's what my body wanted. And so yeah, in the
Absolutely.
morning I tune in and I connect and I think, how do I want to feel today? What's my intention with today? And of course, I'm still taking action, but it's intuitive, aligned action. And so within my business, I used to go from like numbers, 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 numbers to now it's like, universe, align me with the souls of the women who need to be, impacted by this work. Like, help me see what I need to do next. And it's so potent. I do less and attract more and feel good at the same time. But there's still a part of me that's like, Kim, you need to be hustling. You need to be working 20 hours a day. And I'm like, I'm kind of a bit sad to let that go. I'm like, I don't want to let you go because that's where my validation was, in that hustle and in in that being busy and
Yeah,
feeling like a victim at the end of the day because I'm absolutely shattered. And life doesn't have to feel hard. It can be simple, easy, fun, and joyful. So
absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. I think I've learned that as well. I'm a doer and I am bang, 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 bang. I've got lists. I want to do this and I want to get it done and I want to do it yesterday. And so I put the pressure on myself, and that's my validation for working hard, for having a purpose, to being in that zone of exhaustion and stress, but feeling validated at the end of it because you've achieved so much. And that's one of the things that I learned from following, for example, like the phases of the moon and the cycles of nature. You know, the cycles and the rhythms around us are mirrored by our own internal rhythms and cycles. And we're not meant to go at a million miles an hour. So there will be days when you wake up and you're like, right, I want to do all this today. I've got this and I've got this, and you feel powerful and you feel driven. Absolutely brilliant. Do it, nail it. But accept that the next day you might think, or for the next week, you might think, yeah, I'm done and I want to chill out. And I want to take things easier and I want to do something that nourishes me, because I've managed to tick all the boxes for in my to-do list in like 8 hours in one day. So which should have taken me a week. So, go with that flow. You don't have to be a million miles an hour all the time.
exactly. And this is something I've been trying to figure out in my business as well, because of course there needs to be focus and energy and intention to move things and up level, but I think there's seasons to do it. I think there's times to do it. You can't be constantly.
Yeah,
So the way I see it is, like the different phases of the season. You have spring, and then you have summer, which is in full bloom, and then you have autumn where the leaves are falling off, and then the winter's like really cold. And you're gonna have seasons in your life and in your business. And so what I do now is I work out, okay, so when are the seasons in my business where I do need to be a bit more focused and intentional and bring a bit more of the masculine in for a short amount of time, and then when are the times where I can be more flowy and come from that place of just like attraction and surrender, because you can't force anything at the end of the day.
no.
So yeah, it's definitely been a balance for me and still a work in progress, but We're
It's
getting
one of
there.
it's one of my favorite sayings. We are all a work in progress, you know, and everyone will think that, you know, when you get to a point where you're helping and you're supporting others, that you've nailed it, that you've, well, Kim Meller, she knows how to get it right. She's on a beach in Bali and she's having the best time. But you know, we're all a work in progress. We're all still, our journey is always changing and evolving and flowing, and we've got to change, evolve and flow with it. And you know, those demons are always going to crop up. You know, if you are, one of my friends, she always says to me, Lisa, I know when I ask you to do something, 2 minutes later it's like you've sent me that information that I need. It will take her about a week to get round to it. She says, I wish I was more like you. And I said, it's funny because sometimes I wish I was a little bit more like you, because then I'd take the pressure off myself. So, you know, it's like, it's honoring that you can be all of that if it feels right in that moment, you know, to stop and start. And I think, you know, when I first started getting into mindfulness and natural health and the moon and nature, you know, there was a big stigma around all of this kind of stuff, wasn't there? It's like, oh well, you know, you'd have to be wearing some sort of crazy attire, you know, dancing around in the dark under the moon, you know, with no clothes on or whatever. You know, there was that hippie kind of thing attached to it, or people would think you're nuts. And I, you know, I kept this part of myself, this evolving part of my own spirituality to myself for a very long time, for fear of what will people think of me? Particularly, and I wouldn't say friends, acquaintances that still followed me on Facebook or Instagram from my military days, who knew the military Lisa, who I used to think, oh my God, they're going to think I've lost the plot if I put something like this on. It took me so long to step out of the spiritual closet. And I did that when I created Natural Me. I thought it got to a point where it was too hard to not share it. That's
Yes.
what it is. When it becomes too hard to not share that part of yourself, that's when you know you're ready. And that's when all of a sudden you don't care. You're just going to do it. You've spent years trying to ignore it, hide it. And then you get to one day you wake up and you're like, I'm doing it today. I'm taking that last foot out of the spiritual closet and I'm going to do it. And, you know, I had people saying to me, well done, Lise, because we knew all along that, you know, this is how you were, and when were you going to embrace that side of yourself? So they know, a lot of them know it anyway.
Yeah, and just to speak to that, you know, it's so courageous to step out, and you know, I know my listeners will be so inspired by that. And when you do step out, you know, one of the fears I think people have is, you know, allowing things to fall away.
Yeah.
So, how did you handle maybe people falling away, old identities falling away? Can you speak to that?
I, for a long time, the only people who knew really about this path that I was on were my colleagues, who I met through reflexology in the complementary world, my husband, and but interestingly, my husband, he is a doctor, so he's very scientific, whereas I'm the polar opposite. And I remember him saying to me, I used to tell him some of my experiences, and I'd say, "Do you think I'm nuts?" Well, no, Lise, because I know you and I know that you're not nuts. He says, I can't imagine it, what you're experiencing, but I believe it because I believe you and I know that you're not crazy. I've been really fortunate. You know, I know a lot of people who have really gone off on their own path, something that's away from the norm, and they've had hateful comments, or, you know, people not wanting to know them anymore. And I haven't had too much of that, to be honest. When I left the military, I left a lot of that behind me, and I started again, and I started at grassroots with who I wanted in my life. And those people are with me now, and I have a handful of people that are super, super close. I have all the women in the Natural Me Sisterhood who are there with me, sharing this journey with me. I'm making beautiful soul connections every day, like with you. And I would say the people who don't get you, who maybe have something negative to say, or just want to cut you out, they aren't meant for you. It's not that they were never meant for you, but it's that, as I say, we're all evolving. You've learned what you've needed to from each other, and now it's time to to part and go in a different direction, where you will then meet new people who will help your soul to grow on this new path of your journey. And that's okay. Let those people go with love and gratitude for everything that they've given you in your life up until that moment. And it's okay that they don't get where you're at now, because that's how it's meant to be. They're not meant to be on this next phase of the journey with you. So it's important to know that it's okay to let them go with love.
With love, because that's all there ever is. I love that. And yeah, just a big word is just trust it all. Like, honestly, like anything that can happen in my life now, I'm like, I trust it all. Like, I've given it over to the universe, goddess, whatever you want to call it. And it feels so amazing to just trust the amount of money that's flowing through, to trust the people that are coming my way that I can serve, and to just trust the next phase of life. And there's something really calming within that. And you know, just to kind of finish, it's been so amazing to have you on and to hear your story and to see how you've literally turned your life around 360 from desperation. Not that you were desperate, but you know, desperation to inspiration, I think, is such a catchy phrase, because so many people, I think, are feeling lost and in desperation and feeling like they want more, or there's something else, but they can't quite grasp it. And so I just know that the tools that you've shared here on this call are going to really massively help people so much. So can you please tell everyone how to find you on social media, and tell us when your book's coming out and how we can buy it?
Yes, I can. Yeah. And I just want to say thanks so much for having me, Kim. It's honestly, it's been amazing to be here on your podcast. So I really appreciate that, with so much love in my heart. You can find me at Lisa Natural Me on Facebook and Instagram, or lisamelbourne.com. I have a sisterhood, which is an online membership, which teaches people the tools on how to find their purpose, their passions, rediscover themselves, reconnect to themselves, nature, the moon, learn complementary therapies to use on themselves and their family. So you can find all of that, lisamelbourne.com. And I also have a new podcast as well, the Soulful Goddess podcast. So you can have a listen to that as well after you've listened to Kim's.
That's amazing. I definitely want to be listening to that podcast for sure. Thank you so much. What a pleasure. And guys, like, I didn't know Lisa a few months ago. I can't wait to interview my listeners on my podcast, knowing that something has happened in your life from tools that you've learned from these episodes and how you have turned your life around. So get that on your vision board, guys, to be on the Soul Digger podcast as a guest, to share your story, because you are all inspirational and it is all within you. So just before we go, I wanted to read out a 5-star review of the week. We're currently on 145-star reviews, and I'm so thrilled. Excited. I know we're going to get tons more after this episode as well, Lise. Okay, so this is from Carla Lau. She says, highly recommend. I have been listening to Kim's Soul Digger podcast for a few weeks now and love the topics, guests, and Kim's energy. It is jam-packed with happy, positive, and spiritual advice, which really resonates with me. I especially enjoyed the most recent acceptance one with the lovely guided meditation. I look forward to listening every night when I get into bed with my candles. Thank you for keeping me sane during these cold winter nights. You are a beacon of light. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Carla Lau. Please do screenshot this episode, tag Lisa, tag myself. Let's spread this ripple effect all around the world, and let's help ordinary people create this extraordinary life that is available to every single one of you. And keep on digging, soul diggers, because the magic is within. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me for another episode. I hope your soul feels inspired and expansive, ready for new levels. And if you want to work with me deeper, and you want to know more about my work with Arbonne and how I help people to live aligned, please reach out. I also have a Align and Shine 5-day course that helps you to live in complete alignment, being in flow and ease and co-creation with the universe. So for more information on that, please head over to the Soul Digger Instagram, _, or my website, kimmella.co.uk. And until next time, please subscribe, share this with a friend, and leave a 5-star review. And please let me know what you love best about this episode. And remember, the magic is within.